Hey, what's up y'all? This is William, the permaculture consultant, and here's a little quick tip on compost. If you're needing rain, if it's really dry where you are, just make a compost pile or dig a hole, and it's guaranteed you'll get torrential downpours shortly after that compost pile. Now, I should also say, I do apologize for not coming out with very many videos this week. I had the stomach flu or the stomach bug or something like that, and I was vomiting from both ends, so videos were not getting made, but I got better just in time for this first flip on this animal manure compost pile. Now right here you can see it caved in a little bit with all the water that we just got. And if you haven't seen this beginning part, if you haven't seen how to actually construct this pile or anything, then go back, check this video out, and then check this one out so you learn how to flip it. So let's go ahead and get this uncovered, and then we'll go ahead and start flipping. Now, if you remember, when I first made this pile, it was completely heaped over the top of this compost cage, and it is completely sunken down. That's the benefit of making your cage way bigger than you need it to be, and putting more materials than you think at the very beginning. Now, just on initial inspection of this compost pile, you can see that there is actually mildew growing on the very top. That's fine for right now. That's where the plastic was actually coming into contact with compost. So you can kind of expect an anaerobic effect. And this is part of the reason I don't like compost tumblers, because everywhere around the compost pile is that plastic layer coming in contact with your compost, creating that anaerobic layer. That's why compost tumblers don't work. Also, they're not big enough. Could you imagine tumbling something this big around? No, that would be a nightmare. So before we flip that new compost pile, we need to flip this pile out of the way. This pile needs to go this direction, and then this pile can go this direction, and this is the progression of our compost. This is the pile that I made a while back on camera, but it's also the combination of another pile that I had made, and then I had subtracted some of it from this for various reasons. Some of it actually went into this, some of it went into the garden for different applications. If you haven't noticed, my sunflowers are starting to bloom, which is always cool. Got a mixture of sunflowers over here. Just saw a red wasp fly by over here pollinating. Look at them. See, they're good guys. They're just annoying sometimes. But we're getting distracted. Let's go ahead and flip this pile and then that pile. Now, flipping this pile is going to be a little bit different than flipping the other pile, the new pile, because this has already gone through all phases of this, or all sections of this compost pile have gone through a thermophilic phase. So all I'm doing is making sure that there's no clumps left behind, that there's plenty of moisture within this pile and not too much moisture. But basically, the real reason I'm moving this compost pile is to kind of just get it out of the way of the other one. Now, it does look like it got a little wet from these recent storms. No problem. Adding this air is going to help out quite a bit. Just make sure you shake it out as you go. I should also say, if you're wanting to learn how to make this compost pile with no animal manure at all, then go back and check out that playlist. It's the 2-ingredient compost pile. Chances are you've probably seen that video already. Let me remind you that June 8th is going to be another East Texas Homesteaders meetup. So if you're anywhere near the area, I'll leave the links and stuff like that down below. Meet us there June 8th from 10 to noon. It's going to be in Gladewater, Texas. There's going to be it seems like a fairly decent group of people, but if you're looking for farming community, if you're looking for homesteading community, if you're looking for other people that just don't think you're crazy, then come on out. We'll have all kinds of topics of discussion. The Texas boys are going to be out there as well. Emily and the baby will be out there also. So it'll be fun. It'll be awesome. Come out and join us. Also, if you need any consultations, then hit the links down below. And if you have any questions for Permaculture Q&A, then leave them down in the comment section. And let's get on with the video. Now, when I flip this guy, I'm gonna make sure it's close enough to this one, so that way when I use a tarp to cover these guys up, I can use one tarp instead of having to use 2 separate tarps. There's a little pro tip there for you. And now I'm basically just going to disassemble our cage right here. And this cage is very simple. All it literally is old woven wire fence that I've used. And then whenever I use extra, so it overlaps itself, And the areas where it overlaps, I just take, I've been calling them Knipex, but apparently they're Nipex. I just take these pliers, and you could really use anything that's stiff and metal, and I just twist them together. So that way I'm not using I'm not having to constantly cut zip ties or deal with rusty baling wire or anything like that. I can use the material itself. Make sure you shake any material you have left on the cage off. Well, as much of it as you can anyway. And now we're going to go ahead and start flipping this pile. Let me move the camera so you can get a better angle. Alrighty, so now y'all are in between the sunflowers and the tomatoes. Anyway, the first thing I'm gonna do is take this top off. Now, what I'm considering the top is the actual top few layers and then some of the outside. This area right here, this top part, is going to get set off to the side, and it's gonna become our new middle. I'll use this tarp right here to dump the top on, and then I'll drag it off that way. So this top, once again, I'm gonna put on a tarp, and I'm gonna drag it off to the side because that's gonna become our new middle. And then our middle will become our new bottom, and then I'll put the top back on, and then our old bottom will become the new top. So just stick with me, it'll make sense. First thing I'm gonna do is just take this top off and make sure it's fluffed up well enough. And if I need to add any water, then go ahead and add water. I probably won't need to. Keep in mind, this was the outer side or the very, very top of the compost. So it's going to have the least amount of moisture in it, but also keep in mind, we just did go through a series of torrential downpours. So I probably won't need to add any water, but if you need to, go ahead. There's no issue with it at all at this point. And if there's any clumps, definitely try to break those up. And I know this looks and sounds dry, but it's actually very, very moist. I don't know if you guys can see, but on the very, very top was mold and mildew. This right here is actinobacteria, which is a facultative bacteria that's actually in the in-between stage of aerobic and non-aerobic, or anaerobic, I should say, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. You don't want a whole bunch of them, and you don't want it throughout your compost pile, but it makes sense for it to be in the middle of your compost pile or closer to the middle of your compost pile when you're first, like after your first flip or during your first flip. So if it's in there, don't stress about it. It's just a good indicator that you probably don't need any more moisture, and you need to fluff things up very, very well when you're flipping it. Also keep in mind, you're not gonna see much drastic change during your first flip. So don't be discouraged by that. It's your first flip. There shouldn't be much, like you should still be able to distinguish the different layers of your compost pile or the different ingredients that you have in your compost pile. There we go. That is the top, and we're gonna take the top over to this side over here, and we'll get back to it in a second. Now we are at the center of this pile, and the center is going to become the new bottom. So I can just put this directly on the ground. And the center is the part that has gone through the high temperatures. It sat here for 4 days. You want it at least 135 degrees, and you want it no more than 170 degrees. If you come out here and you notice your pile is over 170 degrees or close or about 170 degrees, then you need to break it open immediately, because now you're getting to the stage where like your microbes can start producing alcohols, and you're reaching temperatures where alcohol vapors can combust. So I know I keep going on about that, but I would hate for somebody to accidentally have a compost fire just because they were trying to make, compost from a video that I showed them or made for them. So it's not that huge of a danger, and it doesn't happen very often, but it's definitely something I want you to be aware of. Because if you're anything like me, you're probably thinking, oh, well, if I add way more nitrogen to carbon, then that'll just break it down even faster. Well, you get to a point of diminishing returns, and you get to a point of anaerobic conditions and compost. So more is not always better. And now we're getting to that layer of manure. Oh yeah. And you'll notice with this method, after like the third flip usually, that's where the biggest change in compost starts happening. That's where you stop, or that's where you get to the point where you're like, oh, I don't see any like individual ingredients in this pile. I see just one big mix of ingredients. And whenever I'm pulling the center out of this compost pile, I'll actually be creating a bit of a bowl shape. Because the outside edges, the parts that have come in contact with the fence, have not gone through that hot phase. They're basically treated like the top or the bottom, where they still haven't gone through that hot thermophilic phase yet. Hasn't been treated for weed seeds or pathogens, which is one of the reasons we're going through this whole thermophilic process, is that way we can use whatever materials we want, because we're eliminating pathogens and we're eliminating any kind of seeds. So this won't produce, this can only bring better conditions by applying it to your garden. Alrighty, so now that the center has been scooped out of the old pile, we are going to put the top in the middle of this pile. I'll drag this over and start scooping it on into the middle of this pile. And keep in mind, it's already been fluffed up since like whenever I added it to this tarp. So I don't need to worry about fluffing it up again, unless you just find any new clumps or anything like that. Now that the center, or the old top, is in the new center, I'm going to put the old bottom as the new top. Now I should also say, this is not how we're going to be flipping it for the rest of the flips on this compost pile. This will only be done for 2 flips in total. This flip and then the one after this. After that, we're going to be flipping it like the compost pile I did at the beginning of this video, because all 3 of those sections have gone through the thermophilic phase, and I know that compost pile is clean. And like I've shown before, I've noticed it's easier if you kind of fluff everything up on this old pile like this, and then you can scoop that and place it directly where you want to on the new pile. Alrighty, so now at this point we're going to wait 2 more days. So today is Saturday, we're gonna wait Sunday, flip it Monday. So, right? Yeah, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. We'll flip on Monday. And we're gonna cover it back up. The water moisture was good. The moisture content on this compost pile was good. So we're not gonna add any more water. And then this compost pile is still curing. Now it's in pretty close proximity to the other pile. I didn't mean for it to be that close, so it might heat up a little bit. We'll see how this reacts to being in such close proximity to that compost pile. It was a little bit hotter than usual just because of that rain that we had. But yeah, that's basically it. This is the 3 ingredient compost with your greens, your browns, and your added animal manure. So that's basically it. Stick around for Monday's video to see the next flip on this compost pile. And like I said before, if you guys need any consultations, then hit the link down below. If you need any permaculture Q&As answered, then leave them in the comments down below. And I can't wait to see you guys June 8th. And until next time, thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you.